I'm Nora, and this is the story of how I turned betrayal into triumph, clawing my way back from nothing to claim what was rightfully mine. My family thought they could erase me from our legacy, but they underestimated me. They left me out of the will, so I bought the family business. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the day I realized I'd been cast aside, and walk you through every step of my revenge. I grew up in the shadow of Langston Textiles, our family's empire nestled in the rolling hills of North Carolina. My great-grandfather started it with a single loom in a dusty shed, and by the time I was born, it was a multi-million-dollar operation, churning out high-quality fabrics for retailers across the country. As a child, I roamed those mills, the hum of the machines as familiar as my own heartbeat. The air always carried the faint scent of cotton dust, and I loved it. My father, Everett Lakeston, ran the company with a steady hand and an iron will. I was his shadow, trailing him through the factory, learning the rhythm of the looms, the art of negotiation, the weight of our name. I wasn't just his daughter, I was his heir, his protege, or so I thought. I was 25 when Dad died. A heart attack, sudden and merciless, stole him from us in the middle of a board meeting. I was gutted, grieving not just the man, but the future I'd envisioned at his side. I expected to step into his role at Langston Textiles. I'd earned it, hadn't I? I'd spent my teenage summers on the factory floor, worked weekends through college, and graduated with a business degree from UNC. I knew the company inside and out, every supplier, every client, every machine. But when the lawyer called us to his office for the reading of the will, my world shattered. I sat across from my stepmother, Verna, a woman with sharp red nails and sharper eyes. Beside her were her children, my half-siblings, Thane and Isolde. Thane, with his slick back hair and perpetual smirk, looked like he'd just stepped out of a yacht club. Isolde, pale and quiet, kept her eyes on her hands. The lawyer's voice was flat, almost bored, as he read, "The company, the estate, the beach house, the investments. Everything went to Verna, Thane, and Isolde." My name wasn't mentioned, not once. I felt the room tilt, my breath catching in my throat. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice cracking like thin ice. Verna's gaze flicked to me, cold and unyielding. "No mistake, Nora," she said. "Your father made his wishes clear." Thane's smirk widened, and he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Isolde glanced at me briefly, her expression unreadable, then looked away. They knew. They'd known all along that I'd been cut out. I stumbled out of that office with nothing but my car keys and a burning in my chest. It wasn't just hurt, it was fury. White hot and all-consuming. I'd given my life to Langston Textiles, sacrificed friendships, relationships, entire summers, all to prove I was worthy, and they'd erased me like I was nothing. I drove home in a daze, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, but one thought kept circling. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry, I was going to fight. The next 2 years were a grind. I took a job at Harrow & Sons, a smaller rival textile company across town. They didn't have the Langston name, but they had ambition. I started at the bottom, inspecting seams in a cramped quality control room, surrounded by workers who didn't know my history. It was humbling, checking stitches while my family's empire churned on without me, but I kept my head down, learned their systems, and started making suggestions. Small things at first, tweaking a supplier contract, streamlining a production line. The bosses noticed. By the end of my first year, I was promoted to operations manager. I worked nights, studied market trends, and pitched ideas in boardrooms where I was the youngest person by a decade. I saved every penny, living in a one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, eating ramen and day-old bread to stretch my budget. All the while, I kept my eyes on Langston Textiles. Verna was running it into the ground. She'd never understood the business, always more interested in the status than the work. Thane was worse, treating the company like his personal ATM, throwing lavish parties, buying sports cars, and jetting off to Ibiza. Isolde, the quieter one, was obsessed with rebranding, pushing garish, avant-garde designs that our conservative clients hated. Sales were slipping, suppliers were pulling back, and whispers of layoffs started circulating. I read every article, every earnings report, every scathing industry blog. I didn't just want their failure, I needed it. It was my opening. To buy Langston Textiles, I needed capital, serious capital. That's where Cale Drayton came in. I met him at a textile trade show in Charlotte, a venture capitalist with a reputation for backing underdogs. He was in his 40s with dark hair graying at the temples and an intensity that made you feel like he could see right through you. I pitched him over coffee in a crowded hotel lobby, my hands steady despite the nerves. Langston Textiles is bleeding money, I told him, sliding a folder of financials across the table. Verna's mismanaging it, Thane's looting it, and Isolde alienating customers. I know that company better than anyone. I can turn it around. Cale leaned forward, his fingers steepled. "And why should I bet on you, Nora?" he asked, his voice low. I met his gaze. "Because I'm not just buying a business. I'm taking back what's mine." Cale agreed to fund me, but it wasn't a handout. He wanted a detailed plan, a team, and a guarantee of returns. He introduced me to Sigrid Voss, a financial strategist with a mind like a steel trap. Sigrid was all angles, sharp cheekbones, sharper wit, and a no-nonsense attitude that cut through corporate fluff. She wore tailored suits and spoke in precise, clipped sentences. Together, we crafted an offer Verna couldn't refuse. We'd buy Langston Textiles at a steep discount, leveraging its declining market value and mounting debts. Sigrid ran the numbers, projecting profits based on my turnaround plan. Cale lined up additional investors, a small group of sharp-eyed financiers who trusted his instincts. I was the face of the deal, the one who knew the company's soul, its workers, its rhythms, its potential. The day I walked into Verna's office with the offer, I felt like I was stepping into a lion's den. She sat behind Dad's old mahogany desk, her red nails tapping rhythmically. Thane lounged on a leather couch, scrolling his phone, his tie loosened. Isolde stood by the window, arms crossed, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. "What's this about, Nora?" Verna asked, her voice dripping with disdain. I slid the proposal across the desk, my heart pounding but my face calm. "I'm buying Langston Textiles," I said. "You're running it into the ground and I'm offering you a way out." Thane laughed, a sharp, ugly sound that echoed in the room. You're a nobody now," he said, not even looking up from his phone. Isolde's eyes widened, but she stayed silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. Verna's face hardened, her nails pausing mid-tap. "This is a joke," she said, picking up the proposal and flipping through it. "It's not," I replied, my voice steady. "Your stock's tanking, your clients are jumping ship, and your employees are quitting. Take the deal, or I'll wait until you're bankrupt and buy it for pennies." Verna tore up the proposal, her movements deliberate, her eyes locked on mine. "You're ungrateful," she spat, "after everything we did for you." I didn't flinch. "You did nothing for me," I said. "You took everything." I turned and walked out, leaving the shredded papers on the desk. Thane called after me, something crude, but I didn't turn back. I'd planted a seed, and I knew it would grow. Over the next 6 months, Langston Textiles unraveled further. The stock plummeted to historic lows. Suppliers stopped extending credit, demanding cash up front. The board was in chaos, with 2 directors resigning in protest of Verna's leadership. I kept the pressure on, meeting secretly with shareholders in hotel conference rooms and coffee shops. I charmed them with my vision, a return to quality, efficiency, and the Langston legacy my father had built. Sigrid worked her magic behind the scenes, securing proxy votes to force a sale. Cale's investors stayed committed, their confidence in me unwavering. When the board finally voted to sell, Verna had no choice. The signing took place in a sterile conference room, the air thick with tension. Verna sat across from me, her face pale and pinched, her signature scrawled angrily on the papers. Thane stormed out halfway through, cursing under his breath. Isolde signed without a word, her hands trembling as she pushed the pen across the page. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The company was mine. The first year was brutal. I worked 18-hour days, rehiring old staff who'd been let go under Verna's reign. I renegotiated contracts with suppliers, convincing them to trust us again. I overhauled production, cutting waste and modernizing equipment. I brought in Juniper Hale, a designer with a knack for blending tradition with innovation. Her patterns, classic yet fresh, sold out in weeks, winning back clients we lost. I promoted Cassian Holt, a floor manager who'd stayed loyal through the chaos, to oversee operations. He was gruff, with a thick beard and a voice like gravel, but he knew the factory better than anyone. Together, we rebuilt Langston Textiles from the ashes. By year 2, we were profitable again. By year 3, we were expanding, opening a new plant in South Carolina, and signing deals with major retailers. The industry took notice. Trade magazines ran stories about the Langston turnaround, calling me a prodigy. I didn't care about the praise. I cared about the workers who kept their jobs, the clients who trusted us again, the legacy I'd reclaimed. Verna moved to Florida, last I heard, living off the payout in a gated community. Thane blew through his share in under a year and is now selling real estate in Raleigh, his Instagram full of forced smiles. Isolde sends me emails sometimes, asking for a job, her tone hesitant and pleading. I don't reply. I don't hate them, not anymore. Hate takes energy, and I'm too busy building. I walk the factory floor now, the hum of the looms like a heartbeat. The workers nod to me, some with pride, others with respect. This is my legacy, not theirs. They left me out of the will, but I didn't need their permission to take what was mine. I'm Nora Langston, and this is my story of revenge, redemption, and a business I fought for with everything I had.